5 days ago, a billboard appeared in Times Square. No title, no explanation. Just an upside-down eye staring through a silhouette, and 4 words that sent shockwaves through every corner of the internet. All will be disclosed. Steven Spielberg, the man who gave us Close Encounters of the Third Kind nearly 50 years ago, the director who many believe was fed classified information by government insiders to prepare humanity for contact, has returned to the subject of extraterrestrials at the exact moment 3i Atlas makes its closest approach to Earth. December 19th, 5 days from now, the same week his trailer drops, the same week an interstellar object that Harvard's most controversial astrophysicist calls a potential alien mothership passes within 167 million miles of our planet. Coincidence? Perhaps. But by the end of this video, you will understand why millions of people no longer believe in coincidences when it comes to disclosure. And what I am about to reveal will fundamentally change how you see everything unfolding around us right now. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and like. Now let me know in the comments where you are listening from tonight, what time it is there, and most importantly, do you believe we are being prepared for something? The billboard that shook Times Square. There is something almost poetic about the way certain events align in human history. We call them coincidences when they make us uncomfortable, and we call them signs when they confirm what we already suspected. But what do we call it when the most famous filmmaker in history, a man whose alien movies have shaped the collective imagination of 3 generations, suddenly unveils a cryptic marketing campaign for an untitled UFO film at the precise moment an interstellar visitor of unprecedented proportions approaches our planet? On December 10th, 2025, mysterious billboards began appearing across Los Angeles and New York City. The imagery was deliberately unsettling. An upside-down human eye, pale and almost spectral, peering through what appears to be the silhouette of a bird. Some have suggested it resembles a blue jay, which carries fascinating implications for those familiar with Cold War-era projects like Project Bluebird. But the text is what captured the attention of millions. All will be disclosed. Spielberg, June 12th, 2026. Now, if you have been following this channel, you already know about 3i Atlas. You know it is the 3rd confirmed interstellar object ever detected passing through our solar system. You know it is potentially the largest such visitor we have ever observed, with estimates suggesting a nucleus diameter of up to 3.5 miles. You know that Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb has catalogued 13 distinct anomalies that he argues cannot be easily explained by conventional cometary science. But what you may not have fully appreciated until this moment is the timing of everything happening around us. December 19th, 2025. That is when 3i Atlas reaches its closest approach to Earth. It is also when the first trailer for Spielberg's untitled UFO film is scheduled to premiere, attached to showings of Avatar, Fire and Ash. The new moon that night will provide optimal viewing conditions for hundreds of observatories around the world to capture the clearest images yet of this mysterious visitor. And all of this is unfolding against the backdrop of the most significant year for UFO disclosure in American history. Let me walk you through what has happened in just the past few weeks. On November 21st, a documentary called The Age of Disclosure premiered on Amazon Prime Video. Within 48 hours, it had shattered the platform's record for highest grossing documentary of all time, outperforming major studio theatrical releases like Jurassic World Rebirth. The film features 34 current and former government officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, making extraordinary claims about an 80-year global cover-up of non-human intelligence. The director Dan Ferrer stated publicly that he believes it is only a matter of time before a sitting president steps to a podium and tells the world we're not alone. And then, less than 3 weeks later, Spielberg's billboard appears. All will be disclosed. Think about the layers of what we are witnessing. A documentary alleging decades of government secrecy becomes the most successful documentary in streaming history. Congress continues pushing for UAP transparency with bipartisan support. Representative Anna Paulina Luna publicly demands NASA release classified images of 3I Atlas, and Hollywood's most legendary science fiction filmmaker chooses this exact moment to return to the genre that defined his career, with marketing language that mirrors the very terminology used by disclosure advocates. For those unfamiliar with the conspiracy theories surrounding Spielberg's earlier work, let me provide some context that has circulated for nearly 5 decades. During the production of Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1976, rumours spread among cast and crew that the film was part of a deliberate government program to acclimate the public to the reality of extraterrestrial contact. Actor Bob Balaban documented these whispers in his production diary at the time. Even Spielberg himself seemed to flirt with the possibility, remarking in a 1977 interview that he would not put it past the government that a cosmic Watergate had been underway for the last 25 years. Whether you believe those theories or dismiss them as paranoid speculation, the facts before us today demand attention. Spielberg's new film, written by longtime collaborator David Koepp, who penned Jurassic Park and War of the Worlds, reportedly features Emily Blunt being pursued by menacing figures in unmarked black vehicles. Early footage descriptions mention dramatic chase sequences, a collision with a speeding train, and Colin Firth overseeing some kind of underground facility, reminiscent of a secret government installation. The tone is darker than E.T., darker than Close Encounters. This is not a story about friendly visitors making contact with wonder-struck humans. This appears to be something else entirely. And the timing. I cannot stress this enough. The first trailer premieres the same week 3I Atlas reaches its closest point to Earth. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not suggesting Steven Spielberg is privy to classified information about 3I Atlas specifically. I'm not claiming there is a coordinated effort between Hollywood and government agencies to prepare humanity for imminent contact. What I'm pointing out is a pattern of convergence that demands intellectual honesty. When multiple threads of a narrative begin weaving together with such precision, we have a responsibility to examine them openly rather than dismissing them reflexively. Consider what Avi Loeb has been saying for months. The Harvard astrophysicist has faced tremendous criticism from the mainstream scientific community for suggesting that 3I Atlas displays anomalies inconsistent with a purely natural explanation. His colleagues have called his ideas nonsense on stilts. NASA officials have repeatedly insisted the object is simply an interstellar comet, exhibiting cometary behaviour. But Loeb continues cataloguing observations that, in his assessment, warrant serious consideration of alternative hypotheses: the retrograde orbit, the alignment within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, the unprecedented size compared to previous interstellar visitors, the anti-tail pointing toward the sun rather than away from it, the nickel-rich emissions without corresponding iron, the non-gravitational acceleration, the trajectory that brings it past Mars, Venus, and now Earth, before heading toward a remarkably precise encounter with Jupiter's Hill radius in March of 2026. Loeb himself has acknowledged that 3I Atlas is most likely a natural comet, but he argues that the remote possibility of something more extraordinary should not be dismissed simply because it makes scientists uncomfortable. If 3I Atlas is technological, he wrote in a recent blog post, it could pose a threat to humanity. We do not have a response protocol for alien technology, and here is where Spielberg's billboard takes on a different resonance. All will be disclosed. Those words carry weight in the UFO community. Disclosure is not just a movie title or marketing slogan. It represents a decades-long hope that governments around the world will finally reveal what they know about unidentified aerial phenomena and potential non-human intelligence. The Age of Disclosure documentary explicitly invokes this concept. Congressional hearings have centered on it, and now the most famous director of alien films in cinema history has chosen to make it the centerpiece of his marketing campaign. 5 days from now, 3I Atlas reaches perigee, 167 million miles from Earth. close enough for the James Webb Space Telescope to gather unprecedented spectroscopic data, close enough for Hubble to capture images that may finally reveal the true nature of this visitor, close enough for hundreds of amateur and professional astronomers around the world to point their instruments at the constellation Leo and witness something that has travelled across interstellar space for perhaps billions of years. And in theatres that same week, audiences will see the first footage of Spielberg's vision for what disclosure might actually look like. I do not believe in coincidences of this magnitude. The universe is either random beyond comprehension, or it is communicating in ways we are only beginning to understand. When a 7-billion-year-old object from another star system arrives at the same moment, humanity is experiencing an unprecedented cultural shift toward openness about extraterrestrial possibilities. We are witnessing something significant. When the filmmaker who shaped our collective imagination about alien contact returns to the subject with a promise that all will be disclosed, we are being told something. The question is whether we are listening. There is a reason Avi Loeb has grown increasingly vocal in recent weeks. There is a reason Congress is pushing harder than ever for UAP transparency. There is a reason a disclosure documentary became the most successful film of its kind in history. And there is a reason Steven Spielberg chose this moment to remind the world that he still has something to say about visitors from beyond. In the coming chapters, we will examine each of the 13 anomalies Loeb has identified in 3i Atlas. We will explore the data NASA has released and the data some believe is being withheld. We will trace the object's trajectory toward its encounter with Jupiter and examine why that particular destination carries such profound implications. But first, we need to understand what makes December 19th so critical and why the scientific community is holding its collective breath as we approach the most significant observational window since this interstellar visitor was first detected in July. Because in 5 days we may finally get answers, or we may discover that the questions run far deeper than anyone imagined. December 19th, the day everything converges. There are moments in history when the universe seems to conspire toward a single point in time. Astronomers call these alignments conjunctions. Astrologers call them portents. Scientists prefer the term statistical anomalies. But whatever language we use, December 19th, 2025, represents something extraordinary. A convergence of cosmic and cultural events that defies easy categorization. Let us begin with the astronomy, because the numbers alone are staggering. At approximately 1700 hours universal time on December 19th, 3i Atlas will reach its closest approach to Earth. The precise distance, calculated by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory with remarkable accuracy, is 268.9 million kilometers, plus or minus 6,000 kilometers. That translates to roughly 167 million miles, or 1.798 astronomical units. For context, that places the object at nearly twice the distance from Earth to the Sun, well beyond the orbit of Mars, but close enough for our most powerful instruments to capture unprecedented detail. What makes this date particularly significant is the lunar phase. December the 19th coincides with a new moon. For those unfamiliar with astronomical observation, this is optimal. A new moon means minimal light pollution from our natural satellite, creating the darkest possible sky conditions for ground-based telescopes. Avi Loeb noted this coincidence in his most recent blog post, calling it an ideal observing night for Earth-based telescopes. Hundreds of observatories around the world are already scheduled to point their instruments at the constellation Leo, where 3i Atlas will be positioned during closest approach. But the astronomical significance extends beyond mere proximity. December the 19th also marks a critical window for spectroscopic analysis. As 3i Atlas continues its journey outward from perihelion, the gases and dust streaming from its nucleus carry chemical signatures that can reveal the object's composition with extraordinary precision. The James Webb Space Telescope is scheduled to conduct follow-up observations during this window. Hubble will capture additional high-resolution imagery. and the data gathered during these observations could definitively answer questions that have plagued researchers since July. Is the anti-tail truly anomalous, or can it be explained by conventional cometary physics? What is the precise ratio of carbon dioxide to water ice in the nucleus? Are the jets emanating from the surface consistent with sublimating pockets of ice? Or do they suggest something else entirely? These questions have divided the scientific community for months. December 19th may finally provide resolution. Now, here is where the convergence becomes truly remarkable. On that same date, theatres showing Avatar, Fire and Ash will premiere the first trailer for Steven Spielberg's untitled UFO film. Audiences who gather to watch James Cameron's long-awaited sequel will first be treated to footage of what early descriptions suggest is Spielberg's darkest and most paranoid vision of extraterrestrial contact. Emily Blunt fleeing government agents, Colin Firth overseeing shadowy operations, the promise that all will be disclosed. Think about the psychological impact of that juxtaposition. Millions of people around the world will watch a trailer about UFO disclosure and government secrecy on the same day that an actual interstellar object of unknown origin passes closest to our planet. Whether by design or cosmic accident, the cultural and astronomical timelines have merged into a single moment of maximum impact. And there is more. The trailer will share billing with previews for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and Marvel's Avengers Doomsday. 3 of the most anticipated films of 2026, all debuting their marketing on December 19th. The theatrical experience that evening will be unlike anything audiences have witnessed in years, a reminder that cinema still has the power to command collective attention in an age of fragmented media consumption. But let us return to 3I Atlas, because the object itself remains the most compelling mystery of all. As of today, December 15th, the interstellar visitor is approximately 270 million kilometers from Earth. Its images are delayed by roughly 15 minutes, the time required for light to travel from the object to our instruments. In the latest observations captured by amateur astronomer Tirasak Taluang, using a modest 0.26-meter telescope in Thailand, 3I Atlas continues to display its characteristic anti-tail. That sunward-pointing feature, uncommon for comets, remains visible in rotational gradient brightness maps. The teardrop shape of the coma, that fuzzy atmosphere of gas and dust surrounding the nucleus, shows no sign of diminishing. What does this tell us? In conventional cometary science, the tail of a comet points away from the sun. Solar radiation pressure and the solar wind push dust and gas particles in the opposite direction of our star, creating the iconic streaming appearance we associate with comets throughout history. But 3I Atlas has consistently displayed a feature pointing toward the sun. This anti-tail was visible in the very first Hubble Space Telescope image captured on July 21st, when the object was still approaching perihelion. It remained visible in the second Hubble image taken on November 30th, after perihelion passage, and it persists today as the object races toward its December 19th closest approach. Avi Loeb has written 3 peer-reviewed papers attempting to explain the physics of this anti-tail. His first 2 papers, co-authored with Eric Quito, propose that the feature results from fragments of ice shed from the sun facing side of 3I Atlas. These tiny ice particles evaporate before solar radiation pressure can push them significantly backward, creating the illusion of a sunward-pointing structure. His third paper, published just days ago on December 8th, suggests an alternative explanation. The anti-tail may consist of a swarm of larger objects lagging behind 3I Atlas due to its non-gravitational acceleration away from the sun. Both explanations are consistent with natural processes. Neither requires invoking technological origin. But Loeb is careful to note that the anti-tail represents just one of 13 anomalies he has catalogued. Each anomaly, considered in isolation, might be explained by unusual but natural phenomena. But when 13 rare characteristics converge in a single object, the statistical probability of coincidence begins to strain credulity. Consider the trajectory alignment. 3i Atlas is travelling within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, the flat disk containing the orbits of all major planets in our solar system. The probability of a randomly incoming interstellar object achieving such precise alignment is approximately 1 in 500. Not impossible certainly, but notable when combined with other factors. Consider the retrograde orbit. Most objects in our solar system orbit the Sun in the same direction, following the rotation established when our star and planets formed from a collapsing cloud of gas and dust 4.6 billion years ago. 3i Atlas moves in the opposite direction, against the grain of solar system dynamics. This retrograde trajectory would be ideal for an object intending to release probes into stable orbits around inner planets. A spacecraft designed for reconnaissance would benefit from approaching targets from an unexpected direction. Consider the size. 3i Atlas is estimated to have a nucleus diameter of up to 3.5 miles. That makes it potentially 3 to 5 orders of magnitude more massive than Oumuamua or Borisov, the only 2 previous interstellar objects ever detected. Why have we not observed countless smaller interstellar visitors if objects of this scale occasionally pass through? The statistical distribution raises uncomfortable questions about either our detection capabilities or our assumptions about interstellar populations. And consider the timing of perihelion and solar conjunction. 3i Atlas reached its closest approach to the Sun on October 29th, just 8 days after passing into solar conjunction on October 21st. During those critical days, when the object was hidden from Earth-based observation by the glare of our star, it could theoretically have performed manoeuvres that would be invisible to our instruments. Avi Loeb has speculated about the possibility of an Oberth manoeuvre, a technique where a spacecraft uses a star's gravity to dramatically alter its velocity while at closest approach. The coincidence of perihelion and solar conjunction, he argues, might not be coincidence at all. NASA officials have consistently dismissed such speculation. Tom Steitler, the agency's lead scientist for solar system small bodies, has stated categorically that 3i Atlas is a comet exhibiting cometary behaviour. The evidence is overwhelmingly pointing to this object being a natural body, he declared at a press conference in November. Oxford astrophysicist Chris Lintott went further, calling any suggestion of artificial origin nonsense on stilts and an insult to the exciting work going on to understand this object. The scientific establishment has spoken. 3i Atlas is a comet. Case closed. And yet, the questions persist. The anomalies accumulate. The data continues to reveal surprises that were not predicted by conventional models. The colour of the coma changed from red before perihelion to green afterward, indicating a shift in molecular composition that planetary scientists are still working to explain. The object displays a pulsating variability in brightness, with a period of 16.16 hours, a heartbeat rhythm that has captured public imagination, even as researchers attribute it to rotational dynamics and periodic jet activity. December the 19th will provide the clearest opportunity yet to resolve these mysteries. The combination of closest approach, optimal viewing conditions, and the full deployment of Earth's observational assets creates a window of unprecedented scientific potential. If 3i Atlas is simply an unusual but natural interstellar comet, the data gathered over the coming days should confirm that conclusion beyond reasonable doubt. The spectroscopic signatures will match predictions. The trajectory will remain consistent with gravitational physics, plus modest outgassing perturbations. The anti-tail will be explained by ice fragment dynamics, or large debris swarms. But if the data reveals something unexpected, something that strains the limits of natural explanation, December 19th could mark the beginning of a very different conversation. I want to be clear about the stakes involved. We're not discussing abstract philosophical questions about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. We're discussing a physical object currently traversing our solar system, an object that can be observed, measured, and analysed with the most sophisticated instruments humanity has ever developed. If that object turns out to be natural, we will have learned something profound about the chemistry and dynamics of other star systems. The carbon dioxide to water ice ratio of 8:1 detected by the James Webb Space Telescope is already among the highest ever recorded, offering a window into conditions that exist nowhere in our own solar neighbourhood. But if that object turns out to be something else, if the anomalies cannot be reconciled with natural processes, if the trajectory toward Jupiter's Hill radius proves too precise to be coincidental, then December 19th will be remembered as the day everything changed. Avi Loeb has said he hopes we will not receive unwanted gifts for the holidays. The statement carries an edge of dark humour, but the underlying concern is genuine. We do not have protocols for encountering alien technology. We do not have frameworks for understanding what such an encounter would mean for human civilization. We have science fiction films and speculative philosophy, but no practical experience with the kind of paradigm shift that confirmed extraterrestrial presence would represent. Steven Spielberg has spent his career imagining what that moment might look like. Close Encounters depicted it as transcendent, almost religious. E.T. framed it as intimate and deeply personal. War of the Worlds portrayed it as catastrophic. His new film, by all early indications, suggests something darker still. Government agents in black vehicles, underground facilities, the promise that all will be disclosed, but disclosed how? To whom? Under what circumstances? These are the questions that will hang in the air as audiences watch that trailer on December 19th. And these are the questions that scientists will be asking as they point their telescopes at a mysterious visitor from interstellar space. The convergence is upon us. What happens next depends on what 3i Atlas chooses to reveal. 13 anomalies that defy natural explanation. Science advances through anomalies. When observations fail to match predictions, when data contradicts established models, when the universe behaves in ways we did not anticipate, those moments of confusion become opportunities for discovery. Quantum mechanics emerged from anomalies in classical physics. Plate tectonics explained anomalies in geological distribution. Dark matter was proposed to account for anomalies in galactic rotation curves. The history of scientific progress is a history of taking anomalies seriously. A.V. Loeb understands this better than most. The Harvard astrophysicist has built his career on pushing boundaries, asking uncomfortable questions, and refusing to accept consensus when evidence suggests alternatives. His willingness to consider unconventional hypotheses has earned him both admirers and critics in roughly equal measure. But whatever one thinks of his conclusions, the anomalies he has catalogued regarding 3i Atlas deserve careful examination. Let us work through them systematically, beginning with those Loeb considers most significant. The first and perhaps most striking anomaly involves Jupiter. According to the latest trajectory calculations from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, 3i Atlas will pass within 53.445 million kilometres of Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. That distance is remarkable for a specific reason. Jupiter's Hill radius, the boundary within which the planet's gravitational influence dominates over the Sun's, is approximately 53.5 million kilometres. The forecasted closest approach of 3i Atlas matches this value to within the margin of error. What makes this coincidence extraordinary is the role of non-gravitational acceleration. 3i Atlas did not arrive on a trajectory that would naturally bring it to Jupiter's Hill radius. The match was enabled by acceleration away from Io, the Sun detected near perihelion, acceleration attributed by mainstream scientists to outgassing from the comet's surface. Loeb calculates the probability of this precise alignment occurring by chance at roughly 4 in 100,000. Those odds alone do not prove anything. Improbable events happen regularly in a universe of countless possibilities. But the specificity of the destination raises questions. Why Jupiter's Hill radius? In orbital mechanics, The Hill radius represents a gravitational sweet spot, where objects can maintain stable positions with minimal energy expenditure. Jupiter's Lagrange points L1 and L2 sit at approximately this distance, locations where spacecraft can orbit indefinitely, with only minor course corrections. If an interstellar probe intended to establish a permanent observation post within our solar system, the Hill radius of the largest planet would be an optimal choice. The fuel requirements for orbital insertion would be minimized. The vantage point would provide comprehensive views of both inner and outer solar system. This second major anomaly involves the anti-tail, which we discussed in our previous chapter. But let me add context that makes this feature even more puzzling. Solar system comets occasionally display anti-tails, but these are always perspective effects. When Earth crosses the orbital plane of a comet, the dust tail can appear to point toward the Sun from our viewing angle, even though it is actually streaming away. This is well understood geometry, nothing mysterious about it. But 3I Atlas is different. Its anti-tail was visible on July 21st, months before any perspective alignment could explain it. It remained visible after perihelion, when the viewing geometry had changed completely. The orientation of the anti-tail flipped relative to the direction of motion at perihelion, which is definitively not a matter of perspective. Something physical is creating a structure that points sunward, and that something does not match any previously observed cometary behavior. The third anomaly involves the object's size relative to detection probability. 3I Atlas has an estimated nuclear diameter of up to 3.5 miles. Oumuamua, the first interstellar object detected in 2017, was roughly 400 meters long. Borisov, the second interstellar object detected in 2019, had a nucleus of perhaps 0.5 kilometer. 3I Atlas is potentially 10 times larger than either of its predecessors. Statistical models of interstellar object populations predict that smaller objects should vastly outnumber larger ones. If we are detecting an object the size of 3I Atlas, we should have detected hundreds or thousands of smaller interstellar visitors by now. We have not. Either our detection methods are far worse than we believed, or 3I Atlas represents something other than a random sample from a natural population. Loeb estimates that an object this massive entering our solar system by chance should happen only once every 10,000 years. The fourth anomaly is the trajectory alignment with the ecliptic plane. As mentioned earlier, 3I Atlas travels within 5 degrees of the flat disk containing all planetary orbits. Random interstellar objects should arrive from all directions with roughly equal probability. The ecliptic represents a tiny fraction of the total sky. An alignment this precise has a probability of approximately 1 in 500. But context matters here. The ecliptic is where planets are located. If an object intended to pass close to multiple planets, travelling along the ecliptic would be the most efficient approach. Mars, Venus, Earth, Jupiter. 3I Atlas encounters all of them during its transit. A natural comet has no reason to prefer this path. A reconnaissance probe would. The fifth anomaly is the retrograde orbit. 3I Atlas moves against the direction of solar system rotation. Prograde orbits, moving in the same direction as the planets, are energetically favoured for objects captured from interstellar space. Retrograde orbits require more specific initial conditions. They also provide tactical advantages for observation. Approaching targets from an unexpected direction reduces the chance of detection and interception. A civilization sending probes to study other star systems might deliberately choose retrograde trajectories for this reason. The sixth anomaly involves chemical composition. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that 3I Atlas emits gas rich in nickel but surprisingly deficient in iron. In most natural environments, nickel and iron appear together. They share similar formation processes and are typically found in comparable abundances. The decoupling of these elements in 3I Atlas suggests either an exotic formation environment or a selective process that concentrated nickel while excluding iron. Loeb has noted that nickel is commonly used in industrial alloys. While he stops short of claiming this proves artificial origin, he has pointed out that the chemical signature is at minimum unusual and warrants further investigation. The seventh anomaly is the timing of perihelion and solar conjunction. We touched on this earlier, but let me emphasize the improbability. 3I Atlas reached its closest approach to the Sun on October 29th, just 8 days after entering solar conjunction on October 21st. During this period, the object was hidden behind the Sun from Earth's perspective. Any maneuvers performed during closest approach would be invisible to ground-based and near-Earth space-based observation. The coincidence allows for speculation about deliberate concealment. If 3I Atlas intended to perform an Oberth maneuver or release smaller probes during perihelion, doing so while hidden from observation would be tactically sensible. Loeb asks whether this timing was mere coincidence, or a result of orbital design and basic astronautics. The question cannot be definitively answered, but it cannot be definitively dismissed either. The eighth anomaly is the rapid brightening observed as 3I Atlas approached perihelion. Comets brighten as they near the Sun because solar radiation heats their surfaces and increases outgassing activity. But 3I Atlas brightened faster than models predicted, and at perihelion it appeared distinctly bluer than the Sun. Dust typically reddens scattered sunlight. A surface colder than the Sun should appear redder, not bluer. The blue coloration suggests a heat source hotter than our star, or a process that does not fit conventional cometary physics. The ninth anomaly is the pulsating variability in brightness. 3I Atlas displays a heartbeat pattern, brightening and dimming with a period of approximately 16 hours. This rhythm has persisted since detection in July. While planetary scientists attribute it to rotation and periodic jet activity, the consistency of the pattern is notable. Natural comets typically show more irregular variability as different surface regions become active and dormant unpredictably. The 10th anomaly involves the carbon dioxide to water ice ratio. James Webb Space Telescope observations revealed a ratio of 8:1, among the highest ever recorded for any comet. This suggests 3I Atlas formed in an environment very different from our solar system, possibly around a cooler star where carbon dioxide ice would dominate over water ice. While this supports natural origin from an exotic location, it also highlights how little we understand about the object's true nature and history. The 11th anomaly is the non-gravitational acceleration detected after perihelion. 3I Atlas is not following a purely gravitational trajectory. Small deviations consistent with outgassing thrust have been measured. This is normal for active comets, but the magnitude and direction of the acceleration precisely enable the Jupiter Hill radius encounter. Without this specific acceleration, the object would miss the gravitational sweet spot by a significant margin. The 12th anomaly is the coma morphology. High-resolution images from multiple telescopes show an elliptical rather than circular coma shape. The dimensions of approximately 26,000 by 24,000 kilometers suggest asymmetric outgassing or an elongated nucleus. More intriguingly, the coma maintains its shape with unusual consistency. Natural comets typically display more chaotic coma structures as surface activity varies unpredictably. The 13th anomaly is perhaps the most provocative. In a peer-reviewed paper submitted for publication, Loeb originally included a sentence suggesting that 3I Atlas may have been targeting the inner solar system by design. An editor, Oxford astrophysicist Chris Lintott, insisted the sentence be removed before publication. Loeb complied, but later co-authored a full paper exploring the technological interpretation, which was accepted by a different journal after peer review. The censorship of scientific speculation, if we can call it that, raises its own questions. Why would an editor demand removal of a hypothesis that is clearly labelled as speculative? Why would the scientific community react so defensively to a suggestion that carries no claim of certainty? The resistance to even discussing alternative explanations has frustrated Loeb and drawn criticism from those who believe science should welcome rather than suppress unconventional thinking. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about what these 13 anomalies do and do not prove. They do not prove that 3i Atlas is artificial. They do not prove that alien civilizations have sent probes to our solar system. They do not prove anything beyond the fact that this interstellar visitor displays characteristics that are individually rare and collectively remarkable. What they do prove is that 3i Atlas deserves serious investigation rather than dismissive certainty. When NASA officials declare that the evidence overwhelmingly points to a natural comet, they are expressing confidence that the anomalies will eventually be explained by conventional physics. That confidence may be justified. But it is not the same as having actually explained the anomalies. Science requires humility. The universe has surprised us before, and it will surprise us again. 3i Atlas may turn out to be nothing more than an unusual comet from an unusual star system. But if we foreclose the possibility of alternative explanations before the data is fully analysed, we risk missing something extraordinary. December 19th approaches. The anomalies remain, and the questions multiply faster than answers. The anti-tail that points toward the sun. Of all the anomalies surrounding 3i Atlas, none has captured scientific attention quite like the anti-tail. This sunward-pointing structure defies the basic physics we've come to expect from comets. It has persisted through perihelion passage, it has maintained its orientation across months of observation, and despite multiple peer-reviewed papers attempting to explain its origin, it remains a source of genuine mystery. To understand why the anti-tail is so significant, we need to revisit some fundamental principles of cometary science. When a comet approaches the sun, solar radiation heats its surface. Volatile compounds, primarily water ice and carbon dioxide ice, sublimate directly from solid to gas. This outgassing carries dust particles from the nucleus into space, forming the characteristic fuzzy atmosphere we call the coma. As these particles stream away from the nucleus, they encounter two forces that push them in roughly the same direction. Solar radiation pressure acts on dust particles like wind on a sail. Photons from the sun carry momentum, and when they strike, small particles, they transfer that momentum in a direction away from the sun. The smaller the particle, the greater the effect relative to its mass. Micrometer-scale dust grains can be accelerated to significant velocities by radiation pressure alone. The solar wind provides additional push. Our star continuously emits a stream of charged particles, protons and electrons, moving outward at hundreds of kilometers per second. When these particles encounter the ionized gas surrounding a comet, they drag it away from the sun, creating the characteristic ion tail that always points directly opposite to our star. The combination of these forces means that cometary tails should always point away from the sun. This is not merely a tendency or a statistical expectation. It is a consequence of fundamental physics. Radiation pressure and solar wind do not reverse direction. They always push outward from the sun. A tail pointing toward the sun would require some other force strong enough to overcome this constant outward pressure. Yet here is 3i Atlas, displaying exactly that. A structure pointing sunward that has persisted since the earliest observations in July. The first Hubble Space Telescope image, captured on July 21st when 3i Atlas was still approaching the sun, clearly showed an anti-tail. At that time, the object was 2.98 astronomical units from Earth, nearly 3 times the distance from Earth to the sun. The anti-tail was apparent in the image, pointing in a direction that should have been impossible. Some researchers initially speculated that this might be a perspective effect. Solar system comets occasionally appear to have anti-tails when Earth crosses their orbital plane. The dust trail left behind the comet can appear to project sunward from certain viewing angles, even though it is physically located in the anti-solar direction. This explanation is well understood and has been documented for numerous comets in our own solar system. But 3i Atlas does not fit this explanation. The viewing geometry in July did not support a perspective-based anti-tail. More importantly, the anti-tail remained visible after perihelion, when the viewing angle had changed dramatically. The second Hubble image, taken on November 30th, showed the anti-tail persisting at a distance of 1.91 astronomical units from Earth. The orientation had flipped relative to the direction of motion, which is definitively inconsistent with a perspective effect. Something physical is creating this structure. The question is what? Avi Loeb has proposed 3 explanations, each explored in peer-reviewed papers. The first, developed with collaborator Eric Quito, suggests that the anti-tail consists of ice fragments shed from the sun-facing side of 3I Atlas. Here is how this might work. As solar radiation heats the comet's surface, the side facing the sun experiences the most intense warming. Ice sublimates, preferentially from this region, potentially ejecting larger chunks of frozen material in the sunward direction. These ice fragments would initially move toward the sun, propelled by the momentum of their ejection. But as they travel through space, they begin to sublimate themselves, shrinking and eventually disappearing entirely. If the fragments are large enough, they might travel a significant distance before evaporating completely. And because they disappear before solar radiation pressure can reverse their motion, they never join the conventional anti-solar tail. This explanation is elegant and physically plausible. It requires no exotic physics, no alien technology, nothing more than unusual but natural cometary behaviour. The sunward anti-tail would simply be debris from the most active region of the nucleus, caught in the process of evaporation before the usual forces could redirect it. The second explanation, also developed with Quito, involves the thermal properties of ice particles. When ice sublimates, the gas produced can exert thrust on the remaining solid material. If ice particles are shed from 3I Atlas in a sunward direction, their subsequent sublimation would produce gas that pushes them further sunward, at least initially. The particles would be accelerating toward the sun, even as solar radiation pressure tries to push them back. The balance between these competing forces would depend on particle size, composition, and solar distance. Under the right conditions, particles could maintain a sunward trajectory long enough to create the observed anti-tail structure, before eventually reversing direction or evaporating entirely. The third explanation, published by Loeb as a single-author paper on December 8th, takes a different approach. Rather than focusing on the physics of small particles, this paper suggests the anti-tail might consist of larger objects. Specifically, Loeb proposes that 3I Atlas is shedding material massive enough to be largely unaffected by solar radiation pressure. Consider a boulder or a collection of boulders ejected from the nucleus in the sunward direction. Objects with diameters of meters or larger would experience negligible acceleration from radiation pressure. Their trajectories would be dominated by gravity and whatever initial velocity they received during ejection. If 3I Atlas ejected such material during its approach to perihelion, those objects would lag behind as the comet accelerated under non-gravitational forces. From Earth's perspective, this debris field would appear as a sunward extension of the coma. The larger objects would not evaporate or be swept away. They would simply fall behind the accelerating nucleus, creating a trail that points in the direction of the sun relative to the comet's current position. This explanation has interesting implications. If 3I Atlas is shedding large debris, that material might remain in the solar system long after the primary object departs. Future missions could potentially intercept and study fragments of an interstellar visitor, providing direct samples of material from another star system. But there is a fourth explanation that Loeb has hinted at without fully developing. If 3I Atlas were technological in origin, the anti-tail might represent something entirely different. Exhaust from propulsion systems would point in whatever direction the thrust is applied. A spacecraft decelerating as it passes through the inner solar system would produce exhaust pointing in its direction of travel, which from certain perspectives might appear to point toward the sun. Loeb has been careful not to overstate this possibility. He acknowledges that the natural explanations are more probable and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. but he has also noted that scientists should remain open to all hypotheses until the data definitively rules them out. The latest images of 3I Atlas, captured just yesterday by an amateur astronomer in Thailand, continue to show the anti-tail. The rotational gradient brightness map reveals a prominent sunward structure that shows no sign of dissipating as the object moves away from the sun. If anything, the anti-tail has become more pronounced in recent weeks, not less. This persistence is itself a puzzle. Under the ice fragment hypothesis, we might expect the anti-tail to diminish as 3I Atlas moves further from the sun and the rate of sublimation decreases. Less heating should mean less ice ejection, which should mean a fainter anti-tail, yet the feature remains robust. Under the large debris hypothesis, persistence makes more sense. Boulders and rocks do not evaporate. Once ejected, they would continue following their trajectories indefinitely, maintaining the appearance of a sunward structure for as long as 3I Atlas remains observable. NASA officials have not publicly addressed the anti-tail anomaly in detail. The November 19th press conference focused on confirming that 3I Atlas displays cometary behaviour and poses no threat to Earth. Questions about specific anomalies were deflected with general statements about ongoing analysis and the expectation that all observations will eventually be explained by natural processes. This confidence may be warranted. The history of astronomy is filled with anomalies that seemed inexplicable at first, but were eventually understood through better data and refined models. The anti-tail of 3I Atlas may join that list. Future observations from Hubble, Webb, and ground-based telescopes may reveal dynamics that make the sunward structure obvious in retrospect. But until that explanation emerges, the anti-tail remains a genuine scientific mystery. It defies the basic physics of cometary tails. It persists across changing viewing geometries. It challenges our assumptions about how interstellar visitors should behave, and it points, quite literally, toward the sun. There is something almost symbolic about that orientation. While conventional tails stream away from our star, fleeing the radiation that creates them, 3I Atlas extends a structure that seems to reach back toward the light. Whether this represents ice fragments in the process of evaporation, boulders falling behind an accelerating nucleus, or something we have not yet imagined, the image itself carries a strange resonance. As December 19th approaches and 3I Atlas reaches its closest point to Earth, every telescope that can observe the object will be watching. The anti-tail will be photographed, analysed and debated. Papers will be written. Theories will be proposed and tested. And perhaps, finally, we will understand what forces are creating a structure that physics says should not exist. Until then, the anti-tail points toward the sun, and the mystery endures. The Loeb scale, and why it matters. Now, in a world where extraordinary claims compete for attention against a backdrop of social media noise and viral misinformation, how do we evaluate the genuinely strange? How do we distinguish between anomalies that merit serious investigation and speculation that serves only to generate clicks? These questions have plagued discussions of unidentified aerial phenomena for decades, and they now confront us as we try to make sense of 3I Atlas. Avi Loeb understood that any discussion of potentially technological interstellar objects needed a framework. Without systematic criteria for evaluation, conversations would devolve into camps of true believers and dismissive skeptics, with no common ground for productive dialogue. So he created what he calls the Loeb scale, a 10-point system for assessing anomalous interstellar objects. The scale works like this. A rating of 0 indicates a natural object following expected behaviour. A rating of 10 indicates confirmed alien technology with hostile intent. Between these extremes lie gradations of uncertainty and concern. A rating of 5 represents a critical threshold, the point where natural explanations remain possible, but increasingly strained, and where the hypothesis of technological origin can no longer be responsibly dismissed. As of late November, Loeb rated 3I Atlas at level 4 on his scale. high enough to warrant serious attention, but below the threshold where technological origin becomes a leading hypothesis. He has stated that he prefers to wait for the flood of new data expected in the coming weeks before revising this assessment. The December 19th closest approach will provide critical information that could push the rating in either direction. But what would it take to reach level 5, and what would the implications be if that threshold were crossed? To understand the stakes, we need to examine how the Loeb scale maps onto the specific anomalies of 3I Atlas. Each characteristic contributes to the overall assessment, weighted by its rarity and its resistance to natural explanation. The Jupiter Hill radius encounter, scheduled for March 2026, carries enormous weight in Loeb's framework. The precision of the alignment, enabled by non-gravitational acceleration near perihelion, has a probability of roughly 4 in 100,000 if occurring by chance. This single factor pushes the rating significantly upward. If the object was simply an inert rock following gravitational dynamics, it would not arrive at Jupiter's gravitational sweet spot with such accuracy. The anti-tail contributes additional points. No natural comet has displayed a persistent sunward structure of this type across such varied viewing geometries. While explanations involving ice fragments or debris swarms remain plausible, the phenomenon has not been definitively resolved. Each day that passes without a conclusive natural explanation increases the weight of this anomaly in the overall assessment. The size distribution anomaly raises the rating further. If interstellar objects follow a normal distribution, where smaller objects vastly outnumber larger ones, we should have detected many more visitors before 3I Atlas. The fact that we found an object potentially 10 times larger than any previous interstellar detection suggests either that our survey methods have severe blind spots, or that 3I Atlas is not a random sample from a natural population. The chemical composition anomaly, the trajectory alignment, the retrograde orbit, the timing of perihelion and solar conjunction. Each factor adds incremental weight. None proves technological origin individually. Together they create a profile that Loeb considers genuinely unusual. Now, critics have pointed out that the Loeb scale is not a formally validated scientific instrument. It was created by one researcher based on his own assessments of probability and significance. Different scientists might weight the factors differently, arriving at different ratings for the same object. The scale reflects Loeb's judgment, not consensus opinion. This criticism is fair, but it somewhat misses the point. The Loeb scale is not meant to provide definitive answers. It is meant to provide a common language for discussing anomalous objects without either dismissing them reflexively or embracing unfounded speculation. It is a tool for thinking, not a tool for proving. And right now, as 3I Atlas approaches closest approach, that tool is being tested more rigorously than ever before. Consider what would need to happen for 3I Atlas to reach level 5 on the Loeb scale. The most obvious trigger would be direct evidence of technological signature, a radio transmission, for example. The Meerkat radio telescope in South Africa conducted a search on November 5th, scanning for narrowband signals from the object across frequencies from 900 to 1670 megahertz. Over 23,000 signals were detected, but all were determined to be inconsistent with the object's position, likely human-made radio frequency interference. The detection limit established by this observation was 0.17 watts, roughly equivalent to a mobile phone handset at the distance of 3I Atlas. If the object is transmitting, it is doing so at power levels below our current detection threshold. This could mean there is nothing to detect, or it could mean that any signals are being directed elsewhere or encrypted, or using frequencies outside our search range. A detection of artificial light would also dramatically shift the assessment. Telescopes pointed at 3I Atlas have observed fluctuations in brightness, but these have been attributed to rotation and jet activity rather than artificial illumination. If future observations revealed structured light patterns, geometric flashing, or spectral signatures inconsistent with reflected sunlight, the rating would spike immediately. Trajectory changes inconsistent with outgassing would provide perhaps the strongest evidence. Comets can perform small maneuvers through the rocket effect of sublimating ice. These changes are modest, predictable, and proportional to the comet's activity level. A sudden course change unrelated to observed outgassing would be extremely difficult to explain naturally. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory is tracking 3I Atlas with extraordinary precision. Any significant deviation from the predicted path would be detected and reported. But here is where the Loeb scale intersects with broader questions about disclosure and institutional trust. Even if anomalous data were detected, who would decide when and how to announce it? What protocols exist for communicating information about potentially artificial interstellar objects? The answer, disturbingly, is that we do not really know. NASA has not published specific guidelines for handling evidence of extraterrestrial technology. The SETI Institute has protocols for confirming and announcing detection of artificial signals, but these were designed for radio astronomy, not interstellar objects passing through our solar system. There is no international framework for coordinating response to potential first contact scenarios involving physical visitors. Representative Anna Paulina Luna recently demanded that NASA release classified images of 3I Atlas. The request implies that unreleased data exists, though NASA has not confirmed what additional observations may be withheld from public disclosure. Loeb has echoed calls for complete transparency, arguing that the scientific community and the public have a right to see all available data on this unprecedented visitor. The lack of clear protocols creates fertile ground for conspiracy theories. If official sources are perceived as withholding information, alternative explanations flourish. The 40% of social media discussion about 3I Atlas that references aliens or extraterrestrial technology reflects not just public fascination, but public distrust. When institutions dismiss questions rather than answering them, people seek answers elsewhere. The Loeb scale attempts to counter this dynamic by providing a rational framework for discussion. Instead of binary debates about whether 3I Atlas is or is not alien technology, the scale allows for graduated assessment. An object can be rated at level 3 or 4, indicating genuine anomalies worthy of investigation, without claiming certainty about technological origin. The conversation can focus on evidence rather than belief. But the scale also carries risks. By quantifying the probability of technological origin, it inevitably draws attention to that possibility. Media coverage of Loeb's assessments has emphasized the alien hypothesis, even when Loeb himself rates it as improbable. Headlines proclaim that a Harvard scientist says 3I Atlas could be a mothership, while burying the caveats and qualifications that accompany such statements. This is not Loeb's fault. He has been remarkably consistent in stating that natural explanations are more likely than technological ones. But in a media environment that rewards sensationalism, nuance often disappears. The Loeb scale becomes a tool for generating engagement, rather than a framework for careful analysis. As December 19th approaches, the scale faces its most significant test. Data gathered during closest approach will either strengthen or weaken the case for anomalous interpretation. Spectroscopic analysis will reveal the composition and velocity of material in the jets and anti-tail. High-resolution imaging will constrain the size and shape of the nucleus. Trajectory tracking will determine whether non-gravitational acceleration continues at expected levels or deviates unexpectedly. If the data aligns with natural cometary behavior, Loeb has indicated he may lower the rating of 3I Atlas on his scale. The anomalies would remain interesting from a purely scientific perspective, evidence of an unusual but natural visitor from a distant star system. The technological hypothesis would fade into the background, a speculation that generated attention but ultimately found no support in evidence. If the data reveals new anomalies, or if existing anomalies prove resistant to natural explanation, the rating could climb. A move to level 5 would represent a fundamental shift in how the scientific community discusses this object. It would not prove alien origin, but it would acknowledge that such origin can no longer be responsibly excluded from consideration. And if something truly unexpected occurs, a transmission, a trajectory change, an encounter that defies all natural explanation, the Loeb scale would need new categories entirely. The framework was designed for objects whose nature is uncertain. It was not designed for objects whose nature is certain and extraordinary. We are 4 days from closest approach. The telescopes are ready, the data will speak, and the Loeb scale will tell us what that data means. The age of disclosure, from documentary to reality. 3 weeks ago, a documentary premiered that would shatter every record for its category. The Age of Disclosure appeared on Amazon Prime Video on November 21st, and within 48 hours had become the highest-grossing documentary in the platform's history. It outperformed theatrical releases from major studios. It dominated social media conversation, and it brought claims about government knowledge of non-human intelligence into mainstream discussion with unprecedented force. The timing could not have been more significant. 3I Atlas had just emerged from solar conjunction, becoming observable again after weeks hidden behind the sun. Spielberg's mysterious UFO film had been announced but not yet marketed. Congressional pressure for UAP transparency was building toward year-end deadlines. Into this environment arrived a nearly 2-hour documentary featuring 34 current and former government officials making extraordinary claims on camera. Director Dan Farrer spent 3 years producing The Age of Disclosure in secrecy. He sought out sources with direct knowledge of government UAP programs, interviewing military pilots, intelligence officials, and elected representatives from both political parties. The result is a film that presents itself as the most serious and sourced documentary on the government's handling of UAP information to date, according to The Guardian's review. The central thesis is straightforward. Non-human intelligence exists. The United States government has known about it for at least 80 years. A secret program has investigated and concealed evidence of extraterrestrial contact since the late 1940s, and major nations are now engaged in a race to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. These claims are not new. They have circulated in UFO communities for decades. What makes the Age of Disclosure different is who is making them. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appears on camera discussing bipartisan efforts to declassify UAP information. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand speaks about the need for transparency. Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper offers his perspective on institutional secrecy. These are not fringe figures or anonymous sources. They are current and former officials at the highest levels of American government. Jay Stratton, former director of the Pentagon's UAP task force, provides perhaps the most striking testimony. "I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings," he states in the film. This is not speculation or second-hand reporting. It is a direct claim of personal experience from someone who held official responsibility for investigating unidentified aerial phenomena. Luis Elizondo, former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, narrates significant portions of the documentary. He describes discovering a secret legacy program that has operated outside normal oversight for decades. He alleges that this program has investigated and concealed evidence of extraterrestrial contact while operating beyond the awareness of elected officials who theoretically oversee such activities. Now, I want to be clear about something important. The Age of Disclosure presents claims. It does not present proof. No alien bodies appear on screen. No recovered spacecraft are shown. No technology of demonstrated non-human origin is revealed. The film relies entirely on testimony, the credibility of its witnesses, and the viewer's willingness to accept their statements as truthful. Critics have noted this limitation forcefully. The New York Times reviewer wrote that anyone who sits through its nearly 2 hours of unprovable claims is a chump. Variety observed that almost nothing in the age of disclosure is new in the sense of providing evidence that skeptics would find persuasive. The film preaches to believers while offering nothing to convert the unconvinced. But the phenomenon of the documentary itself is worth examining regardless of how one assesses its claims. Why did this particular film resonate so powerfully at this particular moment? Why did millions of people pay to watch government officials discuss UFOs when such discussions have been available for free on YouTube for years? Part of the answer involves production quality. The age of disclosure is professionally made, with high production values that distinguish it from the amateur documentaries that populate the UFO space. It looks legitimate in a way that many similar projects do not. The Hollywood Reporter described it as a sensationalistic wolf in understated sheep's clothing, noting that its polished presentation lends credibility to claims that might otherwise seem outlandish. Part of the answer involves timing. The documentary arrived at a moment of maximum public receptivity. Congressional hearings on UAPs had been generating headlines throughout 2025. Whistleblower testimony had introduced concepts like recovered non-human biologics into mainstream discourse. The stigma that once surrounded UFO discussion has eroded significantly, making it socially acceptable to engage with claims that would have been dismissed as crazy just a few years ago. And part of the answer involves Three-Eye Atlas. The documentary premiered precisely as an actual interstellar object of unprecedented characteristics was approaching Earth. Viewers could watch government officials discuss alleged encounters with non-human craft, and then open their news apps to read about an interstellar visitor displaying 13 anomalies that a Harvard scientist argues resist natural explanation. The boundaries between documented speculation and speculative documentation blurred. Farrer has stated publicly that he believes the release of his film will be followed by a sitting president stepping to the podium and telling the world that we are not alone. This is an extraordinary prediction, and Farrer offers no specific timeline or evidence for why he believes it. But the confidence with which he makes the claim reflects a broader shift in how disclosure advocates view the current moment. The proposed UAP Disclosure Act, which was submitted as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, would establish an independent review board and require public disclosure of UAP records within 25 years. It would prohibit destruction or alteration of UAP records, an inclusion that suggests concern about evidence being eliminated before it can be revealed. The measure has bipartisan support in Congress, though its ultimate fate remains uncertain. Representative Luna's demand that NASA release classified Three-Eye Atlas images demonstrates how the documentary's themes have intersected with the current astronomical event. If the government possesses information about the interstellar visitor that has not been made public, disclosure advocates want to know what that information contains. The documentary has created an environment where such demands carry political weight, rather than being dismissed as fringe concerns. But we should be careful about what conclusions we draw from the success of the age of disclosure. High viewership does not validate claims. Popularity is not evidence. The film could be entirely correct about government knowledge of non-human intelligence, or it could be an elaborate construction of misinterpretation, exaggeration, and wishful thinking. Its box office performance tells us about public appetite for disclosure narratives, not about the truth of those narratives. What we can say with confidence is that the cultural moment has shifted. Discussion of extraterrestrial intelligence is no longer relegated to late-night radio programs and specialized websites. It appears in mainstream media, in congressional hearings, in major streaming documentaries, and now in marketing campaigns from Hollywood's most celebrated filmmakers. The stigma has not disappeared entirely, but it has weakened considerably. Three-Eye Atlas exists within this transformed cultural landscape. When Avi Loeb suggests that the object might be technological in origin, he is not speaking into a void. He is speaking to an audience primed by decades of UFO narratives, recent government acknowledgements of unexplained phenomena, and a documentary that millions of people just watched, claiming that disclosure is imminent. Whether this context helps or hinders scientific understanding of the object is an open question. On one hand, public interest in 3i Atlas has generated unprecedented observational resources. Amateur astronomers around the world are photographing the object nightly. Professional facilities have allocated telescope time that might otherwise have gone to other projects. The scrutiny applied to this interstellar visitor exceeds anything experienced by Oumuamua or Borisov. If there is something unusual to discover, we are more likely to discover it because of the attention generated by disclosure narratives. On the other hand, the same attention creates pressure to find extraordinary explanations for ordinary phenomena. Confirmation bias affects scientists as well as laypeople. If researchers expect to find anomalies, they may interpret ambiguous data in ways that confirm those expectations. The 13 anomalies catalogued by Loeb might look different to someone approaching the object without preconceptions about what it might represent. The age of disclosure did not create these tensions, but it has amplified them. By bringing claims of government cover-ups and non-human intelligence into mainstream conversation, the documentary has raised the stakes of whatever 3i Atlas turns out to be. A conclusive natural explanation would disappoint millions of people who've invested emotional energy in the possibility of first contact. An inconclusive result would fuel endless speculation and conspiracy theorizing, and an extraordinary discovery would validate a worldview that mainstream science has long dismissed. We are 3 days from closest approach. The documentary has been watched, the claims have been made, the cultural context has been established. Now we wait for the object itself to provide answers that no amount of human testimony can substitute for. Whatever 3i Atlas reveals, the age of disclosure has already changed the conversation. The question is whether the change represents progress toward truth or regression toward fantasy. And that question will not be answered by documentaries or congressional hearings or Hollywood marketing campaigns. It will be answered by telescopes pointed at the sky, gathering data from a visitor that cares nothing for human expectations. What NASA refuses to release. There is a pattern that emerges whenever extraordinary claims intersect with government institutions. First comes the official statement, carefully worded to acknowledge facts while dismissing speculation. Then come the questions from journalists, researchers, and the public. Then comes the silence, the redactions, the references to ongoing analysis that somehow never reaches completion. And finally comes the suspicion that what is not being said may be more significant than what is. 3i Atlas has followed this pattern with remarkable fidelity. On November 19th, NASA held a press conference to update the public on observations of the interstellar visitor. The agency confirmed that 3i Atlas displays cometary behaviour. It confirmed that the object poses no threat to Earth. It confirmed that numerous assets from Hubble to Webb to the Mars orbiters have gathered data on the visitor. What it did not do was release that data comprehensively or address the specific anomalies that have generated public fascination. Tom Statler, NASA's lead scientist for solar system small bodies, delivered the key message. The evidence is overwhelmingly pointing to this object being a natural body. It is a comet. He dismissed suggestions of artificial origin as inconsistent with observational data, though he did not specify which observations ruled out which hypotheses. The press conference provided reassurance rather than illumination. Avi Loeb was not satisfied. In subsequent blog posts, he noted that there was no mention of the anti-tail mystery at the NASA press conference. The agency had an opportunity to explain one of the most puzzling features of 3i Atlas and chose not to address it. Whether this reflects scientific caution, incomplete analysis, or deliberate evasion remains unclear. Representative Luna's demand for classified images adds another dimension to the transparency question. The Congresswoman, who appears in the Age of Disclosure documentary, has publicly stated that she believes the government possesses information about 3i Atlas that has not been shared with the public. She has not specified what form this information takes or how she knows it exists. but her demand implies either direct knowledge of withheld data or a reasonable inference based on patterns of government behaviour around sensitive topics. NASA has not responded publicly to Luna's demand. The agency has not confirmed or denied the existence of classified observations. It has not explained what criteria would determine whether 3I Atlas data should be classified in the first place. An interstellar comet would seem to have no national security implications. Unless, of course, it is not merely a comet. This is where institutional distrust becomes a significant factor. When government agencies withhold information, even for legitimate reasons, they create space for speculation to flourish. The absence of data becomes evidence of cover-up in the minds of those predisposed to believe in cover-ups. The refusal to address specific questions becomes confirmation that those questions touch on sensitive truths. Let us examine what data definitely exists but has not been fully released. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured images of 3I Atlas during its close passage to Mars on October 3rd. At that time, the object came within 29 million kilometers of the red planet, close enough for the high-rise camera to achieve pixel resolution of approximately 30 kilometers. These images could constrain the nucleus size, reveal the geometry of the coma and tail structures, and potentially detect any accompanying objects that might have travelled with or separated from the primary body. Partial results from this observation have been mentioned in scientific contexts. The trajectory analysis has been refined using Mars orbiter data, but comprehensive release of the imagery, with full resolution and complete field of view, has not occurred. Researchers have referenced the observations without providing the images themselves for independent analysis. Similarly, observations from NASA's MAVEN spacecraft, which studies the Martian atmosphere, have been conducted but not comprehensively released. The Europa Clipper, currently en route to Jupiter, has observed 3I Atlas and will continue to do so as the object approaches its March encounter with the giant planet. The Lucy and Psyche missions travelling through the outer solar system have contributed observations. Each of these assets has generated data that could illuminate the nature of 3I Atlas. The James Webb Space Telescope conducted observations on August 6th using its NR-spec instrument. Results were announced on August 25th, revealing the extraordinary carbon dioxide to water ice ratio of 8:1. Additional Webb observations are scheduled for December, after perihelion passage. But between the August announcement and today, Webb has presumably continued gathering data on one of the most significant astronomical objects of the decade. What has that data revealed? When will it be released? The European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft, bound for Jupiter's moons, captured images of 3I Atlas on November 2nd, just days after perihelion. ESA released one image showing the coma and hints of dual-tail structure, but JUICE was only 41 million kilometers from the object at that time, far closer than any Earth-based telescope. The full data set from this close encounter has not been published. I am not suggesting that unreleased data necessarily contains evidence of artificial origin. The most likely explanation is mundane. Scientific data requires processing, calibration, and analysis before publication. Researchers want to verify their results before making them public. Journals require peer review that takes time. The absence of immediate data release reflects normal scientific practice, not conspiracy. But normal scientific practice also includes transparency about what observations have been conducted and when results can be expected. The scientific community operates on principles of open exchange. Data sharing accelerates discovery. Replication requires access to underlying observations. When major facilities observe an unprecedented object and then go quiet about results, questions arise naturally. Loeb has been vocal about demanding transparency. In multiple blog posts, he has called for complete release of all available data on 3I Atlas. His argument is straightforward. The scientific community and the public have a right to examine observations of an interstellar visitor that may represent a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for discovery. Withholding data, whatever the reason, undermines trust and prevents independent verification of official conclusions. The response from mainstream astronomy has been mixed. Some researchers have supported calls for transparency while cautioning against premature conclusions. Others have dismissed Loeb's demands as attention-seeking, arguing that his alien hypothesis has already contaminated public understanding of the object. The division reflects broader tensions within the scientific community about how to communicate with the public on sensitive topics. There is also the question of what would happen if data did reveal something extraordinary. What protocols exist for announcing evidence of technological origin? Who would make the decision to release such information, and on what timeline? These questions have no clear answers, because the scientific establishment has never seriously prepared for such a scenario. SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has protocols for confirming and announcing detection of artificial signals. But these protocols were designed for radio astronomy, where signals can be verified through repeated observation and independent confirmation. An interstellar object passing through the solar system presents different challenges. The visitor will be observable for a limited time. Once it departs, the opportunity for additional observation is gone forever. There is no second chance to gather data if initial analysis proves insufficient. This temporal pressure may actually favour transparency. If data is withheld during the observational window, the chance to conduct follow-up observations based on preliminary findings disappears. Every day of delay reduces the scientific value of eventual release. The December 19th closest approach represents peak observational conditions. Data gathered after that date will be less detailed as 3i Atlas recedes from Earth. Yet institutions move slowly. Bureaucratic processes do not accelerate because an interstellar object is passing through. Funding agencies, oversight committees, and publication timelines operate on schedules measured in months and years, not days and weeks. The mismatch between cosmic opportunity and institutional inertia could mean that significant data remains unreleased until long after the object has faded beyond observational reach. Loeb has proposed a simple solution: release everything immediately, in raw form if necessary, and let the global scientific community analyse it collectively. This approach would maximise the number of eyes examining the data and accelerate the identification of any anomalies. It would also demonstrate that institutions have nothing to hide, countering the conspiracy theories that flourish in information vacuums. NASA has not adopted this approach. The agency continues to release information on its own schedule, providing updates that confirm natural cometary behaviour without comprehensively addressing the anomalies that have captured public attention. Whether this reflects institutional caution, bureaucratic inertia, or something more concerning remains unknown. We are 3 days from closest approach. Major telescopes around the world will be observing. Spacecraft across the solar system will be gathering data. And somewhere, in servers and archives and classified databases, information about 3i Atlas already exists that the public has not been permitted to see. The question is not whether there are secrets. The question is what those secrets contain, and until full transparency is achieved, that question will continue to fuel speculation that no amount of official reassurance can dispel. The Jupiter encounter and the Hill radius mystery. After 3i Atlas completes its passage by Earth on December 19th, it will continue outward through the solar system toward a destination that has captured the attention of orbital mechanics experts worldwide. On March 16th, 2026, the interstellar visitor will pass within 53.4 million kilometres of Jupiter. That number, seemingly arbitrary to casual observers, carries profound significance for those who understand the dynamics of planetary gravitational fields. Jupiter's Hill radius is approximately 53.5 million kilometres. This is the boundary within which the giant planet's gravitational influence dominates over the Sun's. Objects inside the Hill radius can potentially be captured into orbit around Jupiter. objects outside remain primarily under solar influence. The Hill radius represents a gravitational threshold, a line in space where the rules of orbital mechanics fundamentally change. The forecasted closest approach of 3i Atlas matches Jupiter's Hill radius to within the margin of measurement error. This precision did not exist in the object's original trajectory. When 3i Atlas entered the solar system, its path would have carried it past Jupiter at a significantly different distance. The match was enabled by non-gravitational acceleration detected near perihelion, acceleration attributed by mainstream scientists to outgassing thrust from sublimating ice. Think about what this means from a statistical perspective. An interstellar object arrives from the void between stars, passes through the inner solar system, experiences acceleration from cometary activity, and emerges on a trajectory that will carry it to within a hair's breadth of the precise distance where Jupiter's gravity becomes dominant. The probability of this alignment occurring by chance, according to Loeb's calculations, is approximately 4 in 100,000. One might argue that improbable events happen regularly. The universe is vast. Low probability outcomes occur constantly when the number of trials is sufficiently large. But 3i Atlas is not a random trial. It is the third interstellar object ever detected, one of only 3 data points we have for objects originating outside our solar system. The statistical sample is far too small to invoke laws of large numbers. More importantly, the destination itself is significant. Jupiter is not a random location. It is the largest planet in our solar system, a gravitational giant that dominates the outer planetary region. Its Lagrange points, L1 and L2, sit at approximately the Hill radius distance. These are locations where objects can maintain stable orbits with minimal energy expenditure, gravitational sweet spots that would be ideal for long-term observation posts. If an interstellar civilization wanted to establish a permanent presence in our solar system, Jupiter's Hill radius would be an optimal choice. The fuel requirements for orbital insertion would be minimized compared to inner planet orbits. The vantage point would provide comprehensive views of both inner and outer solar system, and the distance from Earth would make detection and interference by human technology extremely difficult. I want to be careful here. I am not claiming that 3i Atlas intends to establish an observation post at Jupiter. I am not asserting that the trajectory alignment proves technological origin. I am pointing out that the coincidence is remarkable enough to warrant serious consideration rather than reflexive dismissal. Loeb has suggested that 3i Atlas might release technological devices as it passes through Jupiter's Hill radius. Artificial satellites could be deployed at the Lagrange points, where they would remain stable indefinitely. Mini-probes could be launched toward the Galilean moons, Europa and Ganymede and Callisto and Io, worlds that harbour liquid water oceans beneath their icy surfaces. The Jupiter encounter provides an ideal opportunity for a reconnaissance mission to seed our outer solar system with monitoring equipment. NASA's Juno spacecraft, currently orbiting Jupiter, will be approximately 53 million kilometres from 3i Atlas during the March encounter. This distance is too great to capture detailed imagery or detect small objects that might separate from the primary body. Juno's instruments were not designed for observing interstellar visitors, but the spacecraft may still gather valuable data about any changes in 3i Atlas as it approaches the gravitational boundary. The European Space Agency's JUICE mission, currently en route to Jupiter, will also be positioned to observe the encounter. JUICE is closer to 3i Atlas now, having captured images in early November, but by March it will have travelled further along its trajectory toward the Jupiter system. The spacecraft's advanced instruments could potentially detect anomalous behaviour that ground-based telescopes would miss. But here is the challenge. If 3i Atlas does release smaller objects during its Jupiter passage, detecting them would be extraordinarily difficult. The primary body has a coma spanning tens of thousands of kilometres. Any debris shed from the nucleus would be lost in this cloud of gas and dust until it travelled far enough to become visible against the dark background of space. By the time such objects became detectable, they could have separated significantly from the parent body. Loeb has estimated that particle probes on Earth-based satellites will be unable to capture particles from the jets of 3I Atlas. The same limitation applies to detecting released objects. The distances are too great, the objects too small, the background too cluttered. We would need a spacecraft much closer to the visitor to observe such activity directly. This raises an uncomfortable possibility. If 3I Atlas is technological, and if it intends to deploy observation equipment in our solar system, we might not know about it until those systems choose to reveal themselves. The release could occur behind the obscuring veil of the coma. The deployed objects could be small enough to escape detection, and the implications could unfold over years or decades as alien monitoring systems quietly gather information about Earth and its inhabitants. I recognize that this scenario sounds like science fiction. It requires assumptions piled upon assumptions, each one speculative and unverifiable. The mainstream scientific position is that 3I Atlas is a comet, that the Jupiter trajectory alignment is coincidental, and that no technological deployment will occur because no technology exists to deploy. This position is almost certainly correct, but almost is not the same as certainly, and the consequences of being wrong, even at low probability, are significant enough to warrant attention. Consider what we know about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For decades, SETI has scanned the sky for radio signals that might indicate technological civilization. The assumption underlying this search is that alien intelligence, if it exists, might communicate using electromagnetic radiation. We have found nothing definitive, leading some to conclude that intelligent life is rare or non-existent. But this conclusion assumes that alien civilizations would behave the way we expect. It assumes they would use radio technology. It assumes they would broadcast in ways we can detect. It assumes they would want to be found. None of these assumptions are necessarily valid. A civilization sufficiently advanced to send probes across interstellar distances might have no interest in announcing its presence. Observation without detection could be a deliberate strategy. The dark forest hypothesis, popularized by science fiction author Liu Cixin, suggests that civilizations might hide from each other to avoid destruction by hostile neighbors. If this hypothesis reflects reality, alien probes in our solar system would be designed specifically to avoid detection. 3I Atlas, with its cometary appearance and natural-looking trajectory, would be an ideal disguise for such a probe. It looks like what we expect an interstellar comet to look like. It behaves in ways that can be explained by natural processes. Only the statistical anomalies, the unlikely alignments and unusual features hint at something more, and those anomalies are easily dismissed by scientists committed to the null hypothesis. I am not advocating for the dark forest interpretation. I am not claiming that 3I Atlas is a disguised alien probe. I'm observing that our assumptions about how extraterrestrial intelligence would manifest may be wrong. If alien probes are common in the universe, they might be designed precisely to look like natural objects. We would have no way of distinguishing them from comets and asteroids without extremely careful observation. The Jupiter encounter in March will provide an important test. If 3I Atlas continues on a purely gravitational trajectory, matching predictions with high precision that will support the natural comet hypothesis. If the object displays anomalous behavior as it approaches the hill radius, trajectory changes or brightness variations or unexpected structural changes that will demand explanation. Loeb has indicated that he will be watching closely. Observations from Hubble, Webb, Juno, and ground-based telescopes will be analysed for any deviation from predicted behaviour. The alignment with Jupiter's hill radius is too precise to ignore. Whatever happens during that encounter will inform our understanding of what 3I Atlas truly is. We are 3 months from finding out. The December closest approach to Earth is imminent. but the March encounter with Jupiter may ultimately prove more significant. That is when 3I Atlas will reach the gravitational boundary that has been its apparent destination all along, and what happens at that boundary could change everything we think we know about our place in the universe. Hollywood's role in preparing humanity. There is a theory that has circulated in UFO communities for nearly half a century. It holds that Hollywood has been used, deliberately and systematically, to prepare humanity for the eventual revelation of extraterrestrial contact. Major filmmakers, according to this theory, have been given information or encouragement by government insiders to create narratives that normalize the concept of alien life. When disclosure finally comes, the public will have been psychologically conditioned to accept it. Steven Spielberg's name appears prominently in these discussions. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, released in 1977, depicted contact with extraterrestrial intelligence as a transcendent experience. The film's technical advisor was J. Allen Hynek, the astronomer who had served as scientific consultant to Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official investigation of UFO reports. Hynek had begun his career as a skeptic, but ended it as a believer, convinced that genuine unexplained phenomena existed behind the noise of hoaxes and misidentifications. During production of Close Encounters, rumours spread among cast and crew that the film was part of a deliberate programme to acclimate the public to reality of extraterrestrial contact. Actor Bob Balaban documented these whispers in his production diary. The idea was that by presenting alien encounter as wondrous rather than terrifying, audiences would be primed to respond positively when actual disclosure occurred. Spielberg himself seemed to entertain the possibility. In promotional interviews, he remarked that he would not put it past the government that a cosmic Watergate had been underway for the last 25 years. Whether this was genuine suspicion or clever marketing remains ambiguous nearly 50 years later, but the comments suggest that Spielberg was at least aware of the theories surrounding his work. Now he returns to the subject. After decades of films exploring other themes, after the autobiographical Fabelmans and the historical Bridge of Spies, Spielberg has chosen this moment to make another UFO movie. The timing alone invites speculation about motivation. The marketing campaign emphasizes disclosure explicitly. All will be disclosed. These words, appearing on billboards across Los Angeles and New York City, invoke terminology central to UFO advocacy. Disclosure is not merely a concept. It is a movement, a hope, a decades-long campaign to force governments to reveal what they know about extraterrestrial contact. By placing this language at the centre of his marketing, Spielberg is signalling awareness of the cultural conversation surrounding UAPs. Early footage description suggests the film will be darker than Spielberg's previous alien works. Emily Blunt fleeing government agents in black vehicles, Colin Firth overseeing shadowy operations in underground facilities, chase sequences and explosions. This is not the benevolent contact of E.T. or the awe-inspiring communication of Close Encounters. This appears to be something closer to conspiracy thriller territory, where government secrecy and potential malevolence take centre stage. The shift in tone reflects broader cultural changes. When Close Encounters premiered, trust in American institutions was recovering from the trauma of Watergate and Vietnam. Audiences were ready for hopeful narratives, stories where contact with the unknown led to transcendence rather than terror. Nearly 50 years later, institutional trust has collapsed to historic lows. Conspiracy theories flourish. The government is widely assumed to be hiding information on topics ranging from public health to national security to, yes, unidentified aerial phenomena. Spielberg's new film appears to meet this cultural moment by centering government secrecy and pursuit, by promising that all will be disclosed. The marketing positions the movie as relevant to contemporary anxieties about transparency and truth. Whether the film itself delivers on this positioning remains to be seen, but the marketing strategy demonstrates sophisticated understanding of what audiences want to hear in 2025. The trailer, premieres on December 19th. The same day, 3I Atlas reaches closest approach. The coincidence is either remarkable luck or deliberate planning. Avatar Fire and Ash provides the platform, a massive theatrical release that will draw millions of viewers into theatres worldwide. Those audiences will see Spielberg's vision of disclosure just as an actual interstellar visitor passes closest to Earth. Let us consider what this means for public perception. Audiences who watch the trailer will then go home and read news coverage of 3I Atlas observations. They will see discussions of anomalies and speculation about technological origin. The fictional and factual will blur together in collective consciousness. Spielberg's narrative about government secrecy will prime audiences to view official statements about the interstellar visitor with suspicion. This is not necessarily manipulation. Filmmakers have always reflected and shaped cultural anxieties. When War of the Worlds premiered in 1953, it channeled Cold War fears of invasion and annihilation. When E.T. appeared in 1982, it offered comfort during a period of nuclear tension. Films respond to their moment while also influencing how audiences interpret that moment. Spielberg's new UFO movie follows this tradition. But the specific Convergence of December 19th deserves attention. The trailer could have premiered a week earlier or a week later. The marketing campaign could have used different language. The fact that all will be disclosed appears on billboards. The same week 3I Atlas reaches closest approach is either extraordinary coincidence or calculated synchronization. Hollywood has released numerous UFO-related projects in recent years. The Age of Disclosure documentary, television series exploring government UAP programs, films depicting first contact scenarios. The cultural appetite for extraterrestrial content has never been higher. Studios recognize this appetite and feed it with increasing sophistication. Spielberg's participation elevates the discourse. He is not a marginal figure or a genre specialist. He is arguably the most successful and influential filmmaker in American history. When he makes a UFO movie, the entire entertainment industry takes notice. When he promises that all will be disclosed, the words carry weight they would not carry from a lesser filmmaker. The question of intentionality haunts these observations. Is Spielberg genuinely interested in disclosure, perhaps even privy to information that informs his creative choices? Or is he simply a skilled businessman who recognizes a profitable cultural moment and has crafted marketing to exploit it? Both explanations are consistent with available evidence. Neither can be definitively proven. What we can observe is the effect. The billboard campaign has generated enormous publicity. Social media discussions have linked Spielberg's film to 3I Atlas, to The Age, of disclosure documentary to congressional UAP hearings. A web of associations has formed in public consciousness, connecting fictional entertainment to real-world phenomena. Whether this connection illuminates truth or obscures it depends on one's prior beliefs. For those who believe disclosure is imminent, Spielberg's film represents confirmation. Hollywood is preparing humanity. The powers that be are softening the ground for revelation. When the truth finally emerges, audiences will have been primed by decades of carefully crafted narratives to accept it without panic. For skeptics, the same evidence supports a different conclusion. Hollywood is exploiting public gullibility. Entertainment companies profit from conspiracy theories by giving audiences what they want to believe. The cultural conversation about UFOs has been hijacked by commercial interests that benefit from keeping speculation alive indefinitely. Both interpretations may contain elements of truth. The relationship between entertainment and reality is never simple. Films shape beliefs while reflecting them. Marketing campaigns respond to cultural currents while amplifying them. The feedback loop between Hollywood and public consciousness operates continuously, making it impossible to identify clear causation. 3I Atlas exists independent of these dynamics. Whatever Spielberg's film depicts, whatever the Age of Disclosure alleges, the interstellar visitor is a physical object subject to observation and analysis. Its trajectory is determined by physics, not by marketing campaigns. Its composition reflects formation processes in another star system, not human expectations about what aliens should look like. But public interpretation of 3I Atlas is shaped by culture. When audiences primed by disclosure narratives encounter news about an anomalous interstellar object, they bring expectations and frameworks that influence how they understand what they read. The Harvard scientist becomes a prophet. The anomalies become evidence. The official denials become confirmation of cover-up. Spielberg's film, premiering at this precise moment, adds another layer to an already complex interpretive landscape. December 19th approaches. The trailer will be seen, the object will be observed, and millions of people will try to make sense of both, filtering astronomical data through cultural narratives that have been decades in the making. Whether Hollywood is preparing humanity for disclosure or simply profiting from our fascination with the unknown, the effect is the same. We are primed to see aliens in the sky. We are conditioned to suspect our governments of hiding truth. We are ready for revelation in a way that previous generations were not. If 3I Atlas turns out to be merely an unusual comet, this priming will fade into disappointment. If it turns out to be something more, the priming will have served its purpose. Either way, Spielberg's timing is impeccable. The final hours before closest approach, we have arrived at the threshold. 4 days from now, on December 19th, 2025, 3I Atlas will reach its closest point to Earth. 167 million miles will separate our planet from an object that has travelled across interstellar space for perhaps 7 billion years. In astronomical terms, this is intimate proximity. In human terms, it remains an unimaginable gulf. But for the telescopes and instruments we have trained on this visitor, December 19th represents the optimal moment for discovery. The new moon that night will provide the darkest possible sky conditions. From observatories across the planet, astronomers will gather the clearest data yet on an object that has generated more public fascination than any celestial event in recent memory. Hubble will capture high-resolution imagery of the coma and tail structures. Webb will conduct spectroscopic analysis to determine the precise composition of outgassing materials. Ground-based facilities from Hawaii to Chile to the Canary Islands will contribute their observations to a global data set of unprecedented scope. What will they find? The mainstream scientific expectation is clear. 3I Atlas will behave like a comet because it is a comet. The anomalies that have captured public attention will be explained by unusual but natural processes. The anti-tail will be understood as ice fragment dynamics or debris swarm effects. The trajectory alignment will be recognized as coincidence within acceptable statistical bounds. The chemical signatures will reflect exotic but natural formation conditions in a distant star system, and when the data is fully analyzed, the alien hypothesis will be put to rest once and for all. This expectation is probably correct. The history of astronomy is filled with objects that seemed extraordinary at first, but proved ordinary upon closer examination. Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, generated similar speculation before being tentatively classified as a nitrogen ice fragment from an extrasolar Pluto-like world. Borisov, the second visitor, was clearly cometary from the start. 3I Atlas, for all its anomalies, displays behaviours consistent with cometary activity. The most parsimonious explanation is usually the correct one. But parsimony is not certainty, and the data gathered on December 19th could reveal surprises that no one anticipated. Imagine for a moment that spectroscopic analysis shows jet velocities inconsistent with thermal sublimation. Imagine that the material streaming from 3I Atlas is moving faster than the temperatures involved should allow. This would not prove technological origin. It would, however, demand explanation that existing models do not readily provide. Imagine that high-resolution imaging reveals structure within the coma that appears geometric rather than chaotic. Imagine regular patterns or symmetric features that natural processes would not produce. This would not prove artificial construction. It would, however, raise questions that could not be easily dismissed. Imagine that trajectory tracking over the coming days shows acceleration or deceleration inconsistent with observed outgassing. Imagine the object manoeuvring in ways that comets do not maneuver. This would not prove intelligent control. It would, however, force the scientific community to confront possibilities it has worked hard to avoid. None of these scenarios are likely. Each requires departures from expected behaviour that have no precedent in cometary observation. But 3i Atlas has already provided surprises: the anti-tail, the size distribution anomaly, the Jupiter Hill radius alignment. Each observation has pushed the boundaries of what we thought interstellar comets could be. The pattern may continue, or it may conclude with reassuring confirmation of natural origin. Avi Loeb has said he hopes we will not receive unwanted gifts for the holidays. The dark humour masks genuine concern. If 3i Atlas is technological, Loeb has written, it could pose a threat to humanity. We have no protocols for such an encounter. We have no defences against technology that has crossed interstellar distances. We have only our telescopes and our assumptions and our hope that the universe is friendlier than some fear. I want to take a moment to acknowledge what this conversation represents. For generations, humans have looked at the sky and wondered whether we are alone. The question has driven scientific research, religious speculation, and countless works of fiction. It is perhaps the most profound question our species has ever asked. Are we the only minds in a universe of hundreds of billions of galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars? Or is intelligence common, scattered across the cosmos like seeds waiting to bloom? 3i Atlas does not answer this question. Even if it proves to be technological, it tells us only that one other intelligence exists or existed. Even if it proves to be natural, it tells us only that this particular object is not a message from the stars. The broader question remains open, as it has been for all of human history. But 3i Atlas has changed the conversation. It has brought the question of extraterrestrial intelligence out of the realm of pure speculation and into the domain of observable phenomena. We are not discussing hypothetical signals from distant stars. We are discussing a physical object currently traversing our solar system, an object we can see and measure and analyse. Whatever it turns out to be, it has made the question feel more immediate and more real. The cultural moment amplifies this feeling. The Age of Disclosure documentary argues that governments have been hiding evidence of non-human intelligence for decades. Steven Spielberg promises that all will be disclosed in marketing for his new UFO film. Congressional representatives demand transparency about UAP programs. The stigma that once silenced serious discussion of extraterrestrial contact has weakened considerably. We're talking about these possibilities in ways that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. Whether this represents progress toward truth or descent into collective delusion depends entirely on what the evidence ultimately shows. If 3i Atlas is natural, the cultural moment will have been a fascinating case study in mass psychology. If it is artificial, the cultural moment will have been preparation for a paradigm shift of historic proportions. 4 days remain until we learn more. The telescopes are ready. The observers are prepared. The data will flow from instruments across Earth and throughout the solar system. And then the analysis will begin. The slow, careful work of scientists trying to understand what they have seen. I don't know what 3i Atlas is. Neither does Avi Loeb, despite his willingness to consider unconventional hypotheses. Neither does NASA, despite its confident assertions of natural origin. Neither does anyone else alive today. We have observations and interpretations and arguments, but we do not have certainty. The universe keeps its secrets until we develop the tools and techniques to extract them. December the 19th may provide those tools, or it may simply deepen the mystery, adding new anomalies to a list that already strains natural explanation. Either outcome will teach us something valuable. Either outcome will advance our understanding of the cosmos and our place within it. As I prepare to conclude tonight's exploration, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through the mysteries of Three-Eye Atlas. We have examined the strange convergence of astronomical and cultural events surrounding this interstellar visitor. We have catalogued the anomalies that have captured scientific attention. We have considered the anti-tail, the trajectory alignment, the Jupiter encounter, and the broader questions they raise. We have explored Hollywood's role in shaping public perception and the institutional dynamics that determine what information reaches the public. None of this provides definitive answers. Definitive answers may not come for months or years, if they come at all. But the questions themselves are worth asking. The mysteries themselves are worth contemplating. In a universe that seems increasingly vast and strange, the appearance of a visitor from interstellar space reminds us how much we do not know. Look up at the sky tonight if you can. The stars you see are other suns, many with their own planets, their own possibilities for life and intelligence. Three-Eye Atlas came from somewhere out there, ejected from its home system billions of years ago, travelling through the void until chance or design brought it to our cosmic neighbourhood. It carries information about conditions we have never witnessed, processes we have never observed, perhaps even intentions we cannot comprehend. In 4 days we will see it more clearly than ever before. In 4 days we will gather data that may resolve debates that have raged for months. In 4 days we will learn something new about the universe and about ourselves. Until then, we wait. We watch. We wonder. If you found value in tonight's exploration, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows me to continue investigating the mysteries that captivate us all. And please share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? What do you believe Three-Eye Atlas represents? I read every comment and am always curious to hear your perspectives. I should note, as always, that while I strive for accuracy in presenting scientific information and cultural developments, the interpretations and speculations offered here represent one perspective among many. The anomalies surrounding Three-Eye Atlas are genuinely unusual, but unusual does not mean artificial. The cultural convergences I have described are genuinely remarkable, but remarkable does not mean designed. Critical thinking and open-minded inquiry must go together as we navigate questions that have no easy answers. The truth, whatever it turns out to be, will emerge from evidence rather than speculation. My hope is that this exploration has provided context and frameworks for understanding that evidence as it continues to accumulate. December 19th approaches. Three-Eye Atlas draws nearer, and somewhere out there, in the darkness between stars, the next visitor may already be on its way. Sleep well tonight. Dream of possibilities. And remember that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we have yet imagined. Good night.